We were living in the country when we first married, and we didn't have much. The kids started coming. There was lots of quilting to be done. Some folks were doing better than we were. They'd get together enough material for 2 quilts. I'd piece both of them, and for my work, I got to keep one for nothing. Then one time, Mama came to visit. She saw what I was doing. She didn't say anything, but later on, when she went home, she set out a great big flour sack stuffed full of scraps with the note saying, "Jenny, there'll be no more piecing on the halves for any of us." It's a gift that's always meant a great deal to me. These bags of calico denim and the like have kept cover on our family for generations. Margaret, look at this. Do you remember it? This was a piece of my wedding dress. Love and laughter. Mama kept absolutely everything here.
My name is Sarah McKendry Bonham. I've lived a long time and I've made a heap of quilts. But this last quilt I'm making, this is going to be my best effort ever. It's like a family album. Each pattern means something different to me. My grandmother's pattern is in this quilt, and my mama's, my aunts, my daughters, my sisters, my friends, and many more. They're all here. And so's this great prairie that we all lived on. Like my papa used to say, it's not the end of the world, but you can see it from here.
This was a piece of my wedding dress. Love and laughter and tenderness. Tenderness. And this frigid muslin cover of corn I wore right after my John was born. Wore it after our John was born. With pieces of lies, patches and tatters, all of the precious, the little, the matter of our lives. Pieces of lies, stitches and secrets, pieces of women's lies. Pieces of lies, patches and tatters, all of the precious, the little, the matter of our lives. Pieces of lies, tattered and trimmed, pieces of women's lies. Pieces of lies, swatches and notions, all the unspoken emotion, the emotion of our lives. Pieces of lies, stitches and secrets, pieces of women's lives.
We're going to put this quilt together block by block. Each block is different. Each pattern has the thread of somebody's life running through it. You'll see my thread in there from time to time along with all the others. My memories, my hopes, my dreams, and my prayers. It's my legacy quilt. My dear daughters, I know my time is running out, and I'm surely piecing my last quilt.
I have set out to piece on all the patterns that have some special meaning to me. A different one for every block.
And if it be God's mercy to let me complete it, it will belong to you.
I have been a hard worker all my life.
But most all a woman's work is the kind that perishes with the using, as the Bible says.
All the work I've got to leave behind me.
And I've got to leave something behind me.
It's
just my
quilts.
I hope you'll cherish this last one and use it well.
And I trust you will be able to read what's in it.
In some ways, it's your own story.
Block 1.
Rocky Road to Kansas.
To Oklahoma.
To Colorado. To New Mexico.
To California.
Where the sun always shines and the fruit grows wild.
Rocky road, you're a calling to me. There's a better life at hand. On the rocky road through the prairie sea, I am bound for Canaan's land. Rocky road.
we moved through the prairie without seeing so much as a tree. Seemed like there was nothing at all up ahead, clear to the end of the earth.
At first, it was all grass and sky. And then we came upon a long stretch of gray dust. Nothing but gray and brown. Nothing but dust and tumbleweeds blowing.
Dust covered everything, and everything tasted of dust.
Past 2 new graves.
And then the cold set in. The icy rains. Hailstones as big as rocks. And all those rocks we had to clear to make that road. That's why they call it the Rocky Road West.
3 old graves, 2 new ones.
A baby was born.
Snow came. The footing was treacherous. It slowed us down to a crawl. And those long winter nights came down as sudden as that. And silent.
Now and again, you'd hear something off in the distance. Coyotes, Indians, anything you was afraid of. But there was children with, so you never let on.
7 graves.
1 marker.
Those nights in the wagon, we set to piecing quilts. All of us. We would need as much as we could turn out for the long frost ahead.
Day upon day, we moved out of the long stretch of gray and into whiteness.
When the wagon stopped at this spot, I got out to take a look around. I took a good long look. As far as the eye could see, there was nothing. Emptiness. It was so lonely. How could a human being endure? And then way off in the distance, I thought I could make out some smoke. People, I thought.
Block 2. The first home we had out here was a dugout. It was just a large, single room dug underground. The funny thing about living in a dugout is that I'd never had the feeling that Mama said she had about being closed in down there.
To me, being just a little thing, it seemed the safest place in the world. And many a wind got rode out down there. All I can see from way back then is the light playing on the low ceiling and Mama's back bent over her sewing next to her lamp. I slept with my sister then, and she must have loved me, because I can remember on the coldest mornings, she would get out of bed and warm my clothes next to the fire. And when they were good and warm, she'd stuff them under the quilts next to me, so I could dress up warm before getting out of bed. Well, you didn't have much space, but you had your family all around you. Come to think of it, I don't remember much trouble or distress from those early times, although I know the grown-ups felt it. There were so many stories about rough times when they first settled.
I had my 7th birthday in a dugout in the dead of winter. Papa and Sister and I had come west to Homestead to kind of make a fresh start after Mama died. When the blizzard hit us, it was 30 below. We all slept together under a stack of quilts. Then we piled everything we could find on top of us, but you just couldn't get warm. Sister got really bad. One of us, either Papa or me, had to always be getting up to tend to the fire. Then one night, we could hear the cows outside the door bleating and moaning something awful. And one by one, we could hear them dropping. Where you going, Pa? Pa? Little babes, let's sleep all night. Remember? Mama used to sing it. Little babes, let's sleep all night. Smile in the face of sorrow. Little birds that sleep all night, sing carols on the morrow. The cows all froze, Polly. All the cows are dead. Papa's skinning them now. Don't worry, I'll keep the fire going good. Papa's throwing the cowhides over the roof to keep the heat in. That should help some. Do you want some water? Are you thirsty? I'll get you some fresh snow to drink. I sure wish I could sleep through this the way you do. Here, Paul. It's probably cold already. Take it, Polly. Please take it. I know you want it. You haven't had nothing to eat for 2 days. Take it, Polly! I don't want to open your mouth. I'm afraid I might catch it. Here. I'll put it here. Mama! I don't know what to do.
proper.
Smile in the face of sorrow.
Children come.
Thread the needle. Way back, even before I was old enough to quilt, my mother and older sisters would be quilting, and us little ones had to keep their needles threaded. We'd be out in the yard playing, and they'd holler out to us.
Children come.
Thread the needle.
Thread the needle. Keep on going. Thread the needle. Come. Keep on going. Keep on going. Keep on going. Don't break the ring of the fingers and the stitches. Grab the sharps and the in-betweens. Sharp, sharp.
In between.
Sharp. In between. Sharp, sharp. In between. Stick 'em in the middle of the quilted frame and then go out and play your games. Stick 'em in the middle of the quilted frame and then go out and play your games. Play your games. Play your games. Thread the needle. Thread the needle. Children.
Block 3.
Baby's blocks.
Do you remember when we was little and we had those dark comforts made out of overalls and wool trousers on the bed? Sometimes the neighbor ladies would come in and quilt with Mama. And them quilts was always real pretty.
Once a week when the neighbors would come, Teddy'd have to go upstairs and haul Mama's big old bed frame down to the kitchen and set it up. It was quite a job.
I never minded it though.
There was never more than 4 women working at a time because there wasn't no room for more. And us little ones had to wait outside,
Sometimes we'd stand in the doorway with our thumbs in our mouths watching.
waiting and waiting for them to go home because we were so hungry. But it wasn't proper to ask for food with company in the house.
Oh, but how we envied them pretty bright colored quilts.
Finally, I got up my nerve to ask Mama, please, couldn't we keep just some of them? But she said we could make do with what we had.
Others needed them more. Then you burst into tears.
Well, they took all those pretty quilts to the First Baptist Church. They was for the poor folk and the foreign missions.
And sometimes if somebody lost a house to a fire or twister, all the ladies would go with a stack of quilts and say,
These quilts is from the ladies of the First Baptist Church.
Children come.
Thread the needle.
Thread the needle. Children.
I remember like it was yesterday, my first quilt. Mama had one of those frames that swung down over the bed, and there was always a quilt in it. She quilted for the public to pay our way. Now, we might take one out late one night after it was finished and wait till morning before we put the next one in, but that was as long as it ever was. Mama was a beautiful quilter. She had the smallest stitches and the smallest feet in the county. Everybody knew it. She'd never let nobody else touch her quilts. Sometimes when she was through working for the day on a job that she liked a lot herself, she would pin a cloth over the top of the quilt so that nobody else could see it till she was done. Oh, I always longed to work with her. And I can tell you how plain I recall the day she said,
Sarah, you come quilt with me now if you want to.
I was too short to sit in a chair and reach the frame, so I got my needle and thread and I stood beside her. I pushed that needle through, pulled it up, and way down again, and my stitches was about 3 inches long. Papa came in about that time.
Florence, that child is flat ruining that quilt.
She is doing nothing of the kind. She is quilting her first quilt.
Well, you're just going to have to tear it all out again tonight.
Them stitches is going to be in that quilt until the day it wears out.
All the time they was talking, my stitches was getting shorter and shorter.
Keep 'em all going, keep 'em all going, keep 'em all going, keep 'em all going.
When I was 4 years old, the neighbor's baby died, and all the women was called upon to help. Mama knew exactly what her part was, because right away she took a piece of blue silk out of her hope chest. And I remember that silk, because it was special and I got to carry it. When we got to the neighbor's house, some of the women was in the kitchen cooking, and the men was making the casket. Mama and 3 other ladies set up the frame and quilted all day. First they quilted the lining for the casket, and then they made a tiny little blanket out of the blue silk to cover the baby.
Children come. Thread the needle, children.
Janie, come over here and sit by me. It's time I showed you something. Now, this here's my scrap bag. It's filled with pieces of fabric that I've been saving through the years, all different sizes and textures and colors. Different ones of our family are often appear in one of these bags. Oh, I haven't seen this for a while. This here was your great Aunt Mildred's Sunday go-to-meeting dress. Lord, but she sang high. You could always pick her voice right out of the choir. You know, the one that's a little bit too high? That was Aunt Mildred. Well, when I'm making a quilt top, I take these scraps, cut them into triangles and squares and other shapes. They fit together like a puzzle to form the pattern I want. Then, I put my bottom lining over the frame, my cotton batten in between, my quilt top overall, sew the 3 layers together, and that's called
Quilting?
no. Yes, you're right. You're right. When you get to be a really good quilter, you'll be able to get 11 stitches to the inch. You want to keep this?
Yes, please.
It's yours. I have all kinds of full scrap bags now, and I keep them sorted real neat, so that if ever you need to find something and I'm not here, you should have no trouble. Look, these are all darks. I've always had plenty of darks. I use them if I need a shaded area in a quilt. The log cabin pattern has plenty of those, and sometimes when I want to set off my bright patterns, I use a solid dark block of fabric that has no color in it at all. Some people call that a plain block. I call it a shadow block.
God bless this baby.
Block 4, the Rebel Patch. Lord knows, honey, I never did any quilting when I was young. Not me. I was the kind who ran out in the morning and stayed gone most of the day. The prairie provided us kids with all the toys we could ever want. And with that big playground out there, I couldn't be cooped up in no house. Whoa!
For my Cornelia corn-cob doll,
I found the longest corn silk strands and made her a bright, fine head of hair. And from a
and chopping up a chicken's head and then dressing it for a chicken dinner. My mother tries to make me do quilts all the time, but I'll have nothing to do with that. I told her never in my life am I pricking my fingers till they bleed. Very definitely. And my sister Florrie, she's a real good quilter, I guess. Mama tells me so all the time. Florrie's favorite pattern is the sunbonnet Sue. Mother taught her how to do the applique blocks, and ever since she's made probably a dozen sunbonnet Sue quilts. Well, you've seen them. They're the little dolls turned sideways with the big sunbonnets on. Well, Florrie makes each one different. In one, her little foot will be turned this way or that, or she'll have a parasol, or her hat will be turned just a little bit. People think they're so cute. She made one for everybody in our family, so now we have sunbonnet Sue quilts all over our house. She made a couple for her friends. And last spring, when we all got promoted at school, she presented one to our teacher. I nearly died. And she's still at it. Let me tell you, she is driving me crazy with these sunbonnet Sue quilts. So I decided to make one quilt and give it to Florrie. Now, like I said, I'm not such a good a quilter as Florrie is, but I knew exactly what I wanted to do with this one. It's real small, twin bed size. I finished it this morning and I put it on her bed, but I don't think she's seen it yet. I guess you could say I've done some new things with the sunbonnet Sue. I call it the demise of sunbonnet Sue. Oh, well, each little square is different, just like Florrie makes it. I've got one of her hanging, one with a knife in her chest, eaten by a snake, eaten by a frog, struck by lightning, and burned up. I'm sort of proud of it. You should see it. It turned out real good.
Block 5. I'll tell you what held your life in this country.
A windmill.
No life without it. I remember it so clear, and I was just a little tyke when we moved out to Running Water Draw. That was a funny name for it, because Running Water Draw never had no water in it. Except once in a great while when it rained. And then it flooded all over the place.
The funny thing about the windmill block is that there aren't any circles in it. The circle is a lot harder to cut and sew than the straight edge pieces. I made a Dresden plate once that liked never circled. I had those center edges about a 1/16 of an inch off. When I was a little girl, I watched my papa build a wooden windmill. And you know, he had the same problem.
My daddy decided to dig his well right in the middle of the draw. He figured the water wouldn't have so far to reach up there. Up on the high ground, he couldn't have dug it by himself.
Water was down there all right, but what he didn't figure on was that the sand down there, well, it was kind of like quicksand, and it kept seeping back into the well. To this day, I don't know if I'm more afraid of quicksand or scorpions.
Sometimes when the wind came up, the water would pump into a big wooden barrel on the ground. The barrel was coated with green mossy stuff. Never forget the way it smelled, what my face looked like in the water. When I was about 10 years old, it was my job to hang a bucket on the spout, climb the tower when there wasn't no wind. Then I had to turn the wheel by hand.
Oh, how beautiful that windmill was up against the sky when Daddy got it finished. It meant water, you know, but really it was just beautiful all by itself. Tall with its top turning this way and that, whirring all around. Daddy's hand caught a circle that caught a circle.
Sometimes I seen a grown man slung 30 feet to the ground if the wind happened to come up while he was on top. Me, I'd just grab hold of that wheel and ride round and round till the wind would let me off. Come on in, I'll spin you in my dreams. Let me spin you in my wooden arms all around the world. Come on in, I'll spin you in a dream. Let me spin you in my wooden arms. Daddy's hands, Daddy's hands, Daddy's hands, Daddy's hands.
I'll tell you what held your life in this country.
A windmill. Sometimes the worst would happen and the well would bust. And the whole family would have to take milk cans and go borrowing from the neighbors. Nobody ever asked to be paid back, though.
Block 6, robbing Peter to pay Paul. My daddy was a Baptist preacher. I reckon that's how come I'm so ornery today. But I remember the funniest day one time when I was a young girl. Mama was going to help me start my quilts for my hope chest. She had got the old scrap bag out. We spread them all out on the bed and tried to kind of put the colors together right. But the scrap bag was really low. Mama, seems like we haven't gotten any new scraps in a long time. Everybody in church must be using their own scraps and none have come our way.
You just come to town with me on Saturday, and we'll pick up a couple of pieces of brighter calico to spruce them up a bit.
Come Saturday, true to her word, we went to town with Papa. He went to the feed store and we went to the dry goods. We picked out these 3 pieces of remnant blue and was just fingering some red calico.
Better just count on enough for the middle squares on that, honey. You know what your father will say.
Just then Papa come in, and I guess he saw us looking because he walked right up to that clerk like he wasn't even with us.
How much is on that boat?
20 yards?
I'll take it all.
He picked up that whole bolt and carried it into the wagon. 20 yards of red. Can you imagine? Baptist preacher, just like any other man, likes that red.
And I quote Proverbs, chapter 31, verse 10. Oh, who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies. She seeketh wool and flax, and worketh willingly with her hands. She perceiveth that her merchandise is good.
Amen.
She is not afraid of the snow before her household, for all of her household are clothed with scarlet.
Amen.
Give her the fruit of her hands, and let her own work praise her in the gates.
Amen. We had red for a long, long time after that. Shadow block.
Baptism.
Have you been to Jesus for the cleansing power? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Are you fully trusting in His grace this hour? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb?
I baptize you, Joy Lee Davis, in the name of Jesus Christ.
Mama!
Are you washed in the blood, in the soul cleansing blood of the Lamb?
I baptize you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost.
Are your garments spotless? Are they white as snow? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb?
I was baptized Elizabeth Mary. My friends and my family call me Lizzie, but none of them was the name I was born with.
Block 7, the butterfly.
Mama! Mama, look what I found!
Lizzie, where did you find that?
Out in the shed, I was looking for some tools. Whose is it?
Yours?
Did you make it?
No.
Well, who then?
It was made by your natural mother, Lizzie. She never lived long enough to finish it.
Who was she?
Nobody knew very much about her, just a few things right before the time she died.
Can I know?
Admitted, March 27th. Female, approximately 18 years of age, destitute. Found wandering the roads carrying 2 infant children. Female, approximately 9 months old. Male, approximately 3 days old, deceased.
There were women called Prairie Nightingales. They helped out because there were so few doctors then. They found her and took her to the hospital.
What's your name, child? Can you speak? Easy. Easy now. Jaws are locked. Trauma symptoms.
She was silent. Sometimes you'd read about things like that happening. It happened a lot to young mothers who had too many babies too fast.
That little one needs some rest.
Or too many troubles.
Come on now, we'll take care of him. You know you have to.
Did I stay with her in the hospital?
No, she couldn't take care of you. They put you in the county orphanage and they buried the baby.
My brother.
They say she was very beautiful. She had long, pretty hair.
Patient found this morning with hair cut to scalp. Skirt, petticoats, bed sheets ripped up. Search for instrument proved inconclusive. I'll stay with her, Mrs. Bonham.
Mrs. Bonham.
The patient begins sewing the pieces of her garments together. A close watch is kept until we can relieve her of her tools. She works feverishly. When I first came out west, I was carrying my firstborn. Many times I was left alone and I'd look up and I'd see a dust storm coming right at me. I'd run inside and I'd light my kerosene lamp. And then the wind would start its wailing. Probably would have lost my mind if it weren't for the peace. There's a certain yellow light, and suddenly everything's quiet, and the dust came toward you, rising and rolling, wanting to wrap you inside it. It was dark and cold when the sand hit, and you'd wake up buried alive. It was just like being dead, if not for my butterfly, if not for my butterfly. Goes my butterfly. Out of the belly of Sheol to the sky. What is it? What? Give it to the baby. Give it to the baby. You will when it's finished. Lie down now, you need your rest. I have now given up hope that she will tell us what happened.
She passed on a few months later. We heard about it and asked about you. They brought you out from the nursery in that quilt, an untidy little bundle, big brown eyes staring up at us.
Did she ever speak? Did they ever find out about my real father or what my real name is?
No,
How old was I when you got me?
about a year. We weren't sure, really. Lizzie,
Yes, Mama?
I was going to tell you real soon. You're no different to us than our own flesh and blood. You know that.
I know.
Look at that quilt. She took 4 stitches at a time before pulling the thread through. Thick as she was. 4 stitches at a time. I've never had the heart to put my needle to it.
When I was alone, I looked real hard. It was kind of old and real worn out. There was a single butterfly up in the corner. 4 stitches into space. 4 stitches into space. And then down near the bottom, the stitches started to get bigger and go every which way. I turned it over. I saw something printed showing through. I got the idea that it was a secret message there for me. Maybe my name? Or hers?
Melancholia,
What's your name, child?
insomnia, delirium,
Where are your people?
dementia caused by infant death.
What's your name, child?
Chippewa State Asylum?
Suicide.
A piece of old bedsheet. I'd ripped nearly half the thing up. I didn't want to destroy it, so I stuffed in the batten and I stashed it. I don't want Mama to find out, so now every day I piece a little bit of it back together. 4 stitches and pull. 4 stitches and pull. It's slow going.
This was a piece of my history. Woodrow Schoolhouse and the teacher named Miss Jessie. Block 8, Schoolhouse. Pieces of children's lives.
I really settled into quilting at the Hunter School. Miss Jessie, who taught us all our subjects, was very interested in that sort of thing.
Children, I am pleased to announce that I have finally received permission from the school board to add the subject of geography to your course of studies. You will be the first students at this school to have this opportunity. Before we open this wonderful door, however, we will spend the next 45 minutes, as usual, on our needlework.
She called it needlework, and we each had to make one handmade quilt that year. We had to piece and quilt the whole thing ourselves, and she was real particular about the color and the stitching. If you couldn't find just the right color, she'd let you look in her piece bag. Seemed like her material was always the best. It meant a little bit of Miss Jessie in your quilt.
Straight and true, oh, straight and true.
Straight and true and even.
Those are the guidelines for needlework. It is an art, and every art requires effort. Make as much care with your design as if you were painting or drawing. And if you make a mistake, rip it out. Millicent, that orange will not do, dear. It is vile. Please go to my piece bag and find something more suitable. Ow! Cyrus Johnson, please return to your seat, young man, and do your piecing quietly and stop disturbing this class. Why, Clara, dear, that's lovely. Lily, I can see those stitches from way over here, and they are as crooked as the teeth on a jack-o'-lantern. Please remove and redo.
But Miss Jessie, I'm almost...
Would you leave those shoddy stitches there to be shaming you the rest of your days? Thank you, Lily. You have a choice, young man. You may either stop disrupting this class and do your running stitches quietly, or you may do your running homeward right now and deal with your parents. Thank you. Now, that's the way, Lily. Much nicer.
It's a twister, Miss Jessie, and it's even
Everyone take your slates down to the
here with me, dear. Cyrus, you will please keep quiet. Not all the wind is caused by the weather, young man. Now, we will not let this minor disturbance keep us from our appointed course. We will make good use of our time. I was interested to learn while boarding with your families that your families have come from all over this country. What better way to learn about the subject of geography than to share this information? So your first assignment is to write a composition entitled Where I Was Born. When they are completed, we will read them aloud. Please begin. Clara, dear, repeat after me. Augusta on the Kennebec, Maine.
Augusta on the Kennebec, Maine.
Well, I knew exactly where I was born. It was about 10 miles north of town in a half dugout. Well, I was ashamed of that. And I wasn't about to tell them and let them laugh at me.
Time's up. Lily, let's hear what you've written.
Where I was born was North Carolina, in a great white house with ivory pillars, about 4 or 5 chimneys keeping us warm, and acres and acres, and hundreds and hundreds, and thousands of acres of rolling green lawns. Oh, the green, green, green of the rolling green lawns.
Hush, children, hush. Listen to her. That's the way, Lily.
Where I was born, we had white picket fences, and the lawns went rolling clear down to the road and disappeared. And that great wooden house was like a ship on an ocean of green. And there's no green quite like it out here. Oh, the green, green, green of the rolling green lawns. Oh, the green, of the rolling green lawns. Many years later, my husband crossed the ocean on a real great ship to go to a cattleman's convention in Europe. Well, he wanted me to go too, but I'm too Scotch. And anyway, they were going on a tour, and you had to do just what they told you every minute. I stayed home and quilted all the time. Made the most beautiful quilt, a colonial lady who could have lived in that great wooden house with the ivory pillars. Oh, the green, green, green of the rolling green lawns.
Why, Lily, you've written a poem.
My mama quilted the doves in the window, put it together, and I quilted it too. I would take nothing for it. It was the second quilt I ever made. In the summers, we'd set up the frame on the screen porch, and after the work was done for the day, Mama would say, "Okay, girls, let's go to it." That was a signal for good times and laughing. We'd set up the chairs around the frame, and anyone who dropped in would do the same, even if they couldn't stitch straight. Of course, we'd take out their stitches later if they was really bad. But it was talking and visiting that we put up quilts in the summertime. Oh, people would get out after their chores were done in the summertime, and oh, how the word would fly that we had the frame up. We had to have a screen porch, because sometimes we'd quilt and visit to midnight by lamplight with the bugs batting against the screen. I guess we was the doves in the window then. And that's block 9. 4 doves in a window.
Have you? No. Have you? No. Have you? No. Have you? No. Have you?
No. Have you?
back and in my stomach that I think there's something wrong inside of me. And I'm afraid, too, that it's going to show and that people are going to know. Well, it's bad enough that it has to come from down there. But, Lord, why did you have to make it red? And, Lord, if all girls get it, how come you had to choose me to be first? All the other girls think I'm strange or something. Please, God, please, what I'm asking is please make it go away. I ask this in Jesus' name, amen.
Have you? No, have you? No. Have you?
Yes.
Have you? Lord, why is this happening to me? Is there something wrong with me? Mama says my time will come just like all the other girls. But I'm afraid I'm some sort of mistake. I mean, just look at me. I see all the other girls staring and wondering if there's something the matter with me. Grandma says it's a gift from you. Well, if you can give it to all the other girls, why can't you give it to me? I'm asking this one thing, Lord, and I'll never ask anything again. Please make it come. I ask these things in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen.
My dear friends, I'm holding a piecing party on the first Saturday of next month to celebrate the occasion of my son Jamie's 21st birthday. We'll be making a quilt top for him and would be most honored if you would participate. Please bring some swatches or any usable scraps. The colors will be the traditional red, white, and blue. The fabric and pattern may be anything you choose. Following the sewing bee, there will be the traditional food, drink, and merriment, of course. Please let me know if you can come. Sincerely, Margaret Prentice.
Happy birthday to Jamie. Happy birthday on the eve of your majority. The needle's eye doth supply the thread that runs so true. There's many a moon I let go because I wanted you, because I wanted you.
Jamie, I know deep down in my heart that someday in the near future you will come to realize, as I do, that we were meant to be together forever. That day will be the happiest day in my life. You have told me many secrets, James Prentice, but mine I have never told you. My inscription simply reads, yours till the sun grows cold and the stars are old and the leaves of the judgment book unfold.
The needle's eye doth supply the thread that runs so true. There's many a bow that I let go because I wanted you, because I wanted you.
Jamie, there are hearts hidden in this design. It's supposed to be unlucky to sew them before the engagement is official, but I just couldn't wait. You have to look real hard to see them, though. I can't stand that you don't think you should speak with Daddy just yet, because that means I can't tell anybody, and I'm just busting with the news. But since you want it that way, I will obey you. I may as well get used to obeying you, sweetheart, because it looks like I'll be doing it for a long time. But darling, don't let's wait too long. I'm not that patient. Yours till Wichita Falls. Did you find the hearts? Lavinia Hall.
James, you've always been my favorite nephew, so I'm not going to mince words. Everyone's going to be wanting a piece of you, so don't spread yourself too thin. With all my love and Mattie,
Till the leaves of the judgment book unfold.
with all my love and Mattie,
having nobody telling you what to do anymore. I'm never gonna get my freedom. Everything a girl ever does goes to somebody else, don't you know? Like all the quilts we get go to our husbands. And I ain't never getting married, that's for darn sure. Oh, remember when we was little and you used to tease me about my freckles and stringy hair? And I tried to beat you up and I ended up tearing all my clothes and getting the punishment for it. But I tried to get a piece of that old skirt I wore then, but it just fell apart in my hands. So I took a piece of this from Mama's special scrap. Do you recognize it? It was the first time you ever told me I looked pretty in anything. Well, I wore it the day you took me to town. And remember that man who thought that we was man and woman instead of brother and sister? Well, I saw some pictures of some faraway places in town, and I sure would like to visit them. Maybe we can go together, seeing as how I ain't never getting married. Love your sister, Molly.
There's many a boot and I don't know.
P.S. I like your new girl. She has freckles.
Because I'm waiting here for you. I'm waiting here for you.
Remember this calico print? You should. You had a hard time keeping your hands off it. I wore it the time you came around promising to marry and be true. Well, we sealed that promise, James Earl Prentice. And whatever you say, I done what I done all for the love of you. Now I'm practically gone crazy from the shame of it and waiting for you to come around. But what's keeping you from me, Jamie? I thought we really had something special. Well, I'm not going to beg you. I still have my pride. But I'm here. And I'm sewing the wild goose chase pattern into my block because sometimes that's what loving you feels like. Oh, and another thing. If I ever get near that simp I hear you're fiddling with, I'll tear her hair out. You'll always belong to me, James, no matter how free you think you are. Allie.
If you are not handsome at 20, not strong at 30, not rich at 40, and not wise at 50, you never will be. Well, James, you've got the handsome part down.
I know deep down in my heart that we are
You'll always belong
destined
to
to
me,
be
James.
together.
Darling,
Forever.
let's wait
Too
till we go
long.
together.
I'm
Seeing
not
as
that
how I ain't
patient.
never getting married.
Oh, good luck, Cousin Felicity.
My dearest son, I am making this centerpiece for the quilt, which will simply say, friendship. May you always be surrounded by as many friends as you have now. Happy friendship, happy friendship.
The leaves of the judgment book unfold through Lavinia, Lavinia.
Love your sister, Molly. Molly, 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 Molly.
The needle's eye does sublime, the thread that runs so true. There's many a woe ever known because of loving you, you, you. Because of loving you.
saying, a maid who is quiltless at 21 will never greet her bridal son. I started quilting for my hope chest when I was 11. Why, a baker's dozen of quilts is sometimes the only dowry you had, and a sack of potatoes is what you pay the preacher man with. There's a whole lot of cover to keep warm in one of those old open houses on the plain.
Now, the way I'd done mine was real nice, I think. My daddy had laid out a beautiful arbor in the brush he'd cleared from the land. I went out under that arbor, set up my frame, and went to quilting outdoors. Now, some folks thought that was real funny, but I sure thought it was nice. Mama gave me one real beautiful quilt top, a lone star that she had done by herself. I quilted it and made 3 more by myself that I don't reckon were much to look at, but I was sure proud of them then. And that's what I set off with when I married my sweetheart. Now that's a story. You won't believe it to look at me now, but I married me the finest looking young man for 3 counties around when I was 18. I didn't beat him at no dance neither. Don't reckon I would have stood a chance there. Big size 10s were never so graceful. It's good strong platforms for standing on. Anyway, what I was doing was sitting there under the quilting arbor of an afternoon in the spring. It was the 14th day of April, and the meadowlarks did sing, thinking while quilting through blue, pink, and purple, all the happy colors of my design. I must have had those wild prairie flowers somewhere in the back of my mind. Quilting and a dream on every stitch, conjuring up a cowboy for my husband to be, longing for to see him, the one who lies dreaming underneath my lone star with me. Sitting there under the quilting arbor of an afternoon in the spring. Laughing and blushing and pricking my fingers, ripping out some crazy seams. Quilting and a dream, conjuring up a cowboy strumming on a guitar, dreaming about the caring when to become one, sharing life beneath my lone star, sharing life beneath my lone star.
Pardon me, ma'am. I didn't mean to startle you, but, well, I've been seeing you out here every day for weeks now, and, well, I just got up the nerve to come and speak to you and see what you were working on with such care.
Lordy now, I married him, and I reckon that's the longest speech you ever made at one time to this day.
Block 11.
Double wedding rings.
This was a piece of my wedding dress. Love and laughter, our tenderness.
I think this was the prettiest one I ever made.
All of the remnant, the raiment, the moment of a woman's life.
There was always lots of soldiers around here then, and they was always looking for girls. Sometimes they'd leave signs out on their tents.
Wanted. Lovable housekeeper.
Wanted. Girl. Must be kind to dogs.
At old Fort McPherson during the Indian Wars, they shipped in a whole bunch of Irish girls to be laundresses. Some of them good-looking girls found themselves married in a day or so. I was one of them. They say it took a week or two for the homely ones.
I was born on a mountain, but I don't hardly remember being a girl. I was married to a man before I was 15. I was thinking a while back, and I reckon he must have been about 32 at the time. I guess I liked him some then, but I was just like all the other girls on the mountain. We thought if we could get married and move away from home, we wouldn't have to work so blasted hard. Little did we know what kind of work we was getting into. My first baby was born 9 months and 18 days after we married.
My first baby was Glenn. It was just a baby when I had him myself, but we couldn't have been prouder.
My firstborn was Edwin. That little baby was the light of my life.
Second came Alice. She was no bigger than a minute, but she could yell louder than anyone.
Our third baby was stillborn. Fourth was Mark. He was dark and slender and smart as a whip.
Begin by boiling in a quart of water.
Block 12.
Shadow block.
Secret drawer.
Take 1 tablespoon clip sweet, 1 tablespoon pennyroyal. Let it boil for 15 minutes.
My dear Mabel Louise, another Durham came into the world again last month. This one we called Robert Burns Durham. Little Robert gave me quite a scare being born. Andrew was out logging, and it was a howling northern outside. My water broke, and I was having too much pain. Reaching down and feeling that baby, I just knew it was going to breach. So I put the children to bed, and I told the older ones to keep the fire going no matter what. We have a little room tacked on out back, and I got in there underneath my quilts. I prayed for Andrew to come home. Well, he came blowing in sometime that night. He said he just had a feeling. I was never so happy to see anyone. He pulled that baby out.
Our 5th baby was Jane. She was our first girl and the apple of her daddy's eye. 6th came Betty, and oh, what a scamp she was.
Let's see. My 7th child we named Benjamin. He was named after his granddaddy because of his pretty wavy hair. 8th after Ben came Nan. She was always the quiet one.
Add a cup of quinine and continue boiling for 5 minutes.
Dear Harry, it seems like it's just been one baby after another. I'm pregnant with number 8 and wondering how we'll ever get along. It's like Mom always used to say, I wouldn't take $1 million for any of my kids, but I wouldn't give a nickel for another one.
9th was Daniel. He was born during the drought and didn't get a proper bath till he was walking.
Our 9th baby died when he was just 10 days old. The cholera. 10 and 11 were the twins.
Remove from the fire and add 1/8 teaspoon iron sulfate.
My dear Mabel Louise, all the children are finally asleep. And I'm sitting down to write this letter before I fall asleep myself. The kids are keeping me busy all the time. Luckily, I'm not pregnant again. I'm awful afraid of getting pregnant again. And that's putting quite a strain on things between me and Andrew.
My next miscarried. My 11th was Margaret. She came almost a month early, gave us quite a scare.
Take a handful of human hair and snip it into small pieces. When swallowed, this will bring on stomach contractions.
Dear sister, it seems we'll be expecting our 12th child this winter. I quite frankly don't know what to do away to term. I went to see the doctor to ask him for his help.
Yes, Mabel Louise, you are surely pregnant again. But you didn't come all this way for me to tell you that.
Dr. Blake, this will be number 12 for Caleb and me. I'm almost 35 years old. My last child laid me up for 2 solid months. I'm scared of another one. Caleb needs me well and strong. If I have to take to bed again after the birth, or if I die, I don't know what will happen to my family. Dr. Blake, I'm asking for your help.
Mabel Louise, believe me, I sympathize with your situation. But if you're asking what I think you're asking, you know I can't. My oath forbids taking a life.
I am scared for my life and the life of my children if you don't help me. Please, Dr. Blake, I'm begging you now for relief, please.
Mabel Louise, I'm going to forget we ever had this conversation, and I suggest you do the same. I'm sorry, you're just going to have to live with this. There's nothing I can do.
12th was Ellie.
Miscarried.
13th was Ellen.
14th was Matthew.
Miscarried.
My 15th was Luke.
16th was Samuel.
Miscarried.
Miscarried.
Pour the mixture into a cup and allow it to cool slightly.
My dear Mabel Louise, I have come across a recipe which I hope will be the answer to both our prayers. A woman I know of knows another woman who has used it. My friend guarantees it will relieve you of your problem. The ingredients are simple and I hope available to you. After you have followed the enclosed recipe,
Stir the hair into the mixture.
when it is cooled, you must drink it at once. The taste will be unpleasant, but you must drink the whole thing. My friend tells me that you will be uncomfortable for a time, but it will only be for a little while. There will be plenty of time after Caleb and the children are put to bed. I wish I could be with you, my darling sister. I hate to think of you bearing this burden alone. My thoughts and my prayers are with you. Your loving sister, Harriet.
Edwin.
Peter.
Alice. Sally. James. James. Edward.
Jenny, Jane, Lisa, John, Jody. You sure went in for those J names. Let me see. Margaret, Dana, Joseph, and Ted. I quilt right here every day with all the family pictures out there in front of me. Gives me a good feeling. Makes me think of the time you kids were little and always crawling around under my feet. Well, it doesn't seem so long ago. Hope I can keep up and get this quilt finished. My arthritis is slowing me down again. Getting old just never did agree with me. When people ask me how I get all my energy at my age, I say I don't have time to get old. I'm too busy. Sometimes my hands get so bad, though, that I can't do any quilting at all. I'm just the simplest piecing. But that's why I like this next pattern, the log cabin. It's just skinny little strips sewn one to another. Nothing fancy, but oh, it sure turns out pretty. And you can make it from the tiniest of remnants, the bottom of the barrel, just so long as they're the same width. Some of these belong to my babies. Some of them were given to me by my mama, her children's clothes.
The apple never falls far from the tree, Sarah.
Me and Mama, we never could throw anything away.
One thing about having all those children, they could make the hardest work into fun if they had a mind to. All those months putting up the new house.
Log 13.
Log cabin, every log in my house, straight as a pine can grow.
All his life, my father was a lumberman.
Every log in my house, straight as a pine can grow.
We lived in a forest near Hot Sulphur Springs.
Ooh.
He always whistled when he worked. Sometimes he and Mama would whistle harmony. We always turned to listen to that whenever it happened. I was always allowed to choose if I wanted to work outside with Papa or inside with Mama.
Outside with Papa.
He built our house. It was a log cabin, and it was plenty big. It had a fireplace. It had 4 rooms. He had plans all laid out to make it bigger. When the family grew and he had time, he put such care into fitting everything just perfect.
Every log in my house, straight as a pine can grow. Every log in my house, straight as a pine can grow. Every room has a window
that every single one of those floorboards shrunk up till there was huge cracks between them. But the kids never minded it, though. They just kept jumping from one board to the other. Drive you crazy sometimes. You spill that, and there'll be a licking line and salt when your daddy comes home. You hear me? Don't worry, Mama.
The cows are milk.
The wood is stacked.
Here are the chickens.
Oh, good, everyone. Everyone get ready for bed. It's time for bed on the big day tomorrow. No.
After all of us living in one room for so long, our log cabin seemed like a palace to us. Well, Mama's room was in the front, and it was called the best room. And Papa's workroom was in the back. And we had a lean-to kitchen, and all of us kids slept to either side.
Most of the time. Well, the first night in that house, we were so tired, we just slept like logs. Now, that's a funny saying, because soon after we moved in, Papa had to take the stock off to market, and he left us alone. Well, I began to notice that those logs weren't sleeping at all. Mama? What's the matter, honey? You should be sleeping.
But I can't. There's all kinds of strange noises here.
Oh, Mama!
Mama, can I sleep with you?
Can I?
Mama, what's that noise?
It's the logs, honey. Now go to sleep.
How can they make noises if they're dead?
Well, some of them have been alive for 150 years. You don't think they're going to stop now, do you?
Sounds like they're talking to each other.
What if they're uncomfortable being so close together? What if they're having a fight?
What if they bust apart and the whole house comes tumbling down?
What if snakes come?
Good Daddy, fit them logs true. I am sure they are snug and comfortable. Now go to sleep, please.
Mama,
What is it now?
if the logs are still alive, do you think maybe the house will keep growing?
When you get on in years, sleep doesn't come all that easy. I don't hardly remember sleeping a whole night through anymore. It's not my arthritis that keeps me awake. It's those fool dreams I'm having. There's one where I'm rushing to finish my quilt, and I lost the last pattern. Had that one a couple of times. I set it aside myself, but I don't know where, and I can't remember it. Serves me right. I'm an old quilter, but it took Job's patience for me ever to do the same pattern twice. Nowadays, I can look at something I made a while back, like this here, think to myself, was it me that made that? I couldn't remember that pattern now. Looks like the work of a stranger.
Look at that, Mama. That's your work, all right. The pictures change. The feelings, them Sarah's through and through. Block 14, Country Crossroads.
Let me see. I would say I've made 100 quilts
my lifetime, not bad. I have one quilt that took me 25 years to assemble, and those were 25 after putting the children to bed years. My husband used to say to me, aren't you ever going to put those needles down? But there I'd be, night after night, into my stitches in the midnight oil. Those 25 years took me through a lot of changes. Some of them not so pretty. I tremble sometimes when I think about what that quilt knows about me. 25 years to make a comfort that is longer lasting than a life. 25 years I labored gladly. Who will count the stitches? Sarah, the child and child-bearer, the wife and woman I was taken for.
The stitches tell of all these and many Sarahs more.
Who will count the
Now, my husband always helps me with the quilting. He ain't ashamed of it. He's good at it. I bet if I was to show you quilting both of us done, you couldn't tell the difference between his stitches and mine. I remember that first time the census taker ever made it up here. Now, we didn't have no roads then, or nothing but mesquite as far as the eye could see. Well, one day, up rides this lady, riding side saddle in a long skirt. She was wearing gloves. Well, she come right up into the middle of the yard, and she says, I'm the census taker. I like to never found you. Then she took a big old book out of her saddlebag. My husband asked her, what's that for? She said, to count up all the folks and see what they're doing. Well, he took that lady aside and showed her the stack of quilts we'd made together. And then he said, I just do the quilting. The wife here's the artist. She's the one that makes the light shine. Put that in your book.
I have heard of a land on a faraway strand. It's a beautiful home of the soul, built by Jesus on high, where we never will die. It's a land where we'll never grow. Never grow old. In a land where we'll never grow old. Never grow old. Never grow old. In a land where we'll never grow old.
No, I never married. Once I almost did, but it didn't work out. I was 27 years old at the time. I was quite a go-getter in those days, very headstrong. I'd just come back from teacher's college and was very definite about my career. Well, when I was young, I was sick and couldn't have children, but it never bothered me any. I was so busy with my teaching and my church work and all. And one day, this young doctor came to town. He was from California. Oh my, he was handsome. He had a gap-toothed grin that'd just stop your heart. Well, we just sort of fell in love, you know. I never thought about marrying anyone before. Never met anyone I'd consider spending the rest of my life with. But him, I thought he was pretty special. I told him right off about not being able to have children. I wanted that out in the open right off. I told him I was happy with my work, that it didn't make a bit of difference to me. Maybe later on, if I changed my mind, I might want to adopt kids. But all in all, it suited me just fine. Well, he looked me right in the eye. He said it suited him fine, too. He said he'd never been so sure about wanting kids himself. Anyway, it was me he wanted, and that was enough. Oh, we had some months of happiness after that. He could be so much fun. Then one day he said he'd made a mistake. He really did want kids real bad. I could tell by the way it kind of tore him up that he was real sorry. Shortly after that, a woman he knew from California came to town. They got married. I taught both their kids in school before I retired. Like I said, I never married. Living alone suited me just fine.
In that beautiful home where we'll never more roam, we shall meet in that sweet by and by. Happy praise to the King, to eternity sing. 'Tis a land where we never shall die.
My husband and I married back in Virginia, but he wanted to get out west as soon as he could. So he got a job laying track with the first railroad into New Mexico. When that job was done, they put him to work inspecting 20 miles of track. He walked it. Could do it in a day easy if there wasn't any repair work. I was home, taking care of the stock and the kids, and I wanted to do something real nice for him. So I started making a quilt that took me 2 years to finish. I was always trying to hide it right before he came in, sometimes running when he hit the door and stashing it in the craziest places, like one time in the stove. When it was done, I called in Elizabeth, my oldest, to give it to him. He took it and studied it and studied it. Well, I was just thinking maybe something was wrong with it. And all of a sudden, he rushed over to me, wrapped that quilt around my shoulders, swept me off my feet, and sashayed me all around the kitchen, both of us laughing to beat the band. Oh, he was some man, all right. Next spring, I'd wrapped up my work for the day and was piecing some scraps for the baby that was due the next summer. I just lit the lamp, and I heard lots of horses coming up the road, riding hard. My heart stopped. I reached way down to catch my breath and ran out to the front porch. There were 5 men from the railroad standing there in this big bushel basket on the ground in front of them. They were all sweating and talking over one another's words. Jim Rice thought maybe he fell and hit his head on the track. Slim Henson thought maybe the heat had got him. Nobody could figure out why he didn't hear the train. Never did get a clear reason. They had to bring him home to us in that bushel basket. They say I didn't cry, say a word. Just kind of sat down on the little porch, and bawled, rocking and staring straight ahead. Rocking and staring. Of course, I don't remember much about it now. Hardly anything, in fact, just what they tell me. But I stayed in that back room. Never came out. Must have been my mama came in, set a piecing bag in front of me, needle, spool of thread, some scissors. I didn't know what these things were for. One day my hands reached out. My hands remembered. And they grabbed that top piece and they sewed the next piece to it, and the next one and the next. I never laid a cutting edge to it. It didn't matter what it looked like. 4 months later, I had me a whole quilt. The baby was born. And my eyes came clear again. Praise God from whom all blessings flow. Praise Him, all creatures here below. Praise Him, all ye heavenly hosts. Praise Father, Son, and Holy Ghost.
Block 15, Crosses and Losses.
These quilts is from the ladies of the First Baptist Church.
Revelations, chapter 8. And when he opened the seventh seal, there was a silence in heaven for the space of half an hour.
Later, they said it was a spark coming from the midday train from Tryon that started the fire. We hadn't had any rain all summer, and the valley was dry as a tinderbox.
And he opened the bottomless pit, and behold, there arose smoke from out of the pit, as from the smoke of a great furnace. And the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit.
The wind come up and kept that fire moving, and the smoke was blowing so thick you couldn't tell where the fire was. It could have been 20 miles off or just over the next bridge.
My husband Bert told us.
Plow that strip around the house as wide as you can. Everybody, plow like crazy. I'm riding off to meet the fire.
Everybody set to plowing for all it's worth. The fire guard would send the fire away from your home, but it would keep going in all directions. You couldn't stop it. All you could do was send it someplace else and pray.
Praise Him above, ye heavenly hosts.
Their torment was as the torment of a scorpion when it striketh the man.
These quilts is from the ladies of the First Methodist Church.
A lot of people in town on Saturday business was trapped there. I was the county treasurer at the time, and my home was half a mile from town. So I started out on foot. The smoke was so dense and the sand was blowing right in my face that I could not see the fire from town. And then suddenly, oh God! Oh my God! It's all around me! And there was no way to go except straight through it! No!
I saw something coming at me, blowing like a firebrand, staggering through that plowed field. Clarence! That night, when I cut his boots off of his feet, the skin all the way to the top of the boots come off with it.
Went with Dr. Cooper, the nurse, when we heard about the fire in Tryon. We took with us some quilts the patients had given us for services. By the end of the day, we were ripping them up for bandages.
One woe is past, and behold, there come 2 more woes hereafter.
These quilts is from the ladies of the First Lutheran Church.
I sat in that soddy all alone for hours. Night came and I could see where the fire was blazing against the sky. Then it passed right by. It never touched me. Soon after I heard those terrible sounds, the horses screaming over at the Nelson's barn. I was wondering where my boys were.
The judge and I were in our 70s then. No one to help us. We set out to beat that fire back by ourselves. The stock all roasted in a corner of the pasture, but we fought on to save the buildings. With wet sacks and buckets, we fought for our lives. Then we dragged ourselves to bed. We never got up again.
To this day, I don't know how I got all the babies and the kids out of the field in time. But just what made me do it. There we sat all night. The next morning, Bert came home, and when he saw the fire jump the fire guard, he just sat down and wept. It took us 3 years to build that house, and I helped every step of the way, pregnant or not. And it was that house that burnt down to the ground. all my quilts and all my books in it. And all of our children's things were in there, too. My mama's quilts are in there with mine. We had all we could do to curl up and sleep right there on the ground until we could take in the damage and start rebuilding.
Praise God from whom all blessings flow.
And he showed me a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding out of the throne of God and of the Lamb.
And on either side of the river was there the tree of life, and the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations.
You can't always change things. Sometimes you've got no control over the way things go. Hail ruins the crop, or the fire burns you out. And then you're given just so much to work with in a lifetime, and you gotta do the best you can with what you got. The materials is passed on to you, or is all you can afford to buy. That's what's given to you, your fate. But the way you put them together, that's your business. You can put them in any order you like. Peace is orderly.
Praise Father, Son, and Holy Ghost.
Know ye that there hath no trouble taken you, but is common to all men.
Amen.
Okay, girls, let's go to it.
Dandelion, why so late with your golden crown, with your golden crown? Your comrades long ago laid their splendor down. Though your face smiles bravely up from the grasses dead, washing you, my heart forgets the summer's wealth is fled. Blessings, blessings, little flower, for your shining grace. Doubly welcome that you deck autumn's furrowed face. Dandelions like the compass marches sing beneath privations, elevations, shining brave, thinking above the threatening tempest slumber. Blessings, blessings, honey flower, for your shining grace. Doubly welcome that you deck autumn's furrowed face.
Block 16, Tree of Life.
Weren't never no choice about finishing the house. Mr. Thompson and I, we worked side by side all those years till I was 65. He taught me everything I know about building and carpentry. We was more than married. We was partners. When he died, we was working on this house for ourselves. The day of the funeral, I come home and put my overalls on and went to work. I finished it in 30 days. Never looked up once. I lost 57 pounds that time. Then I set to quilting. I plan my quilts just like I used to plan my houses. People say to me, how come you quilt so good? I just tell them, if you make careful plans, it'll turn out right.
Every log in my heart,
Everything has a time, and early in the morning I am tending my flower.
When everything is in its time, is mended and tended, then it puts me in mind to get to my quilting
And let the light shine.
and let the light shine and let the light shine.
And so, my dear daughters, it is said that
Man proposes and God disposes.
I've been hurrying to get this quilt finished. It's almost done, but it looks like the finishing touches are going to be up to you girls. I give you this, the work of my hands, to you, my dear daughters, with all my love and lessons. May it give you as much joy and comfort in the using of it as it did me in the making of it. Oh, and by the way, when you bury me, don't bury me in my best quilt.
I leave this to you, Jenny, my eldest, to take it and keep it.
Pass it on to the next one.
And to the next.
Each of you keeping it for 1 year.
I hope you will show it to my children and my grandchildren.
And tell them the stories that are in it.
Okay, girls.
Let's go to it.
Pieces